Thanks for checking out Scotty's Hobbies. Today we are going to be doing a transmission filter and gasket replacement on a 2007 Toyota Highlander. This will be a very similar process to many Toyotas out there, not just the Highlander, but here we go. Well, you will need a few tools to get this job going. You're watching probably one part of the video or the other on my two-part series, so we're going to go over everything you need to do the whole job. We'll go over it pretty quick. First, you're going to need, obviously, the transmission filter kit itself. You're also going to need an assortment of 10mm, 1/4" sockets and extensions, as well as a Allen size 10, somewhere, probably can't see it, but there will be a link in the description to buy this stuff. This one's attached to a 3/8 drive wrench. You will also need torque wrenches, or a torque wrench. A 1/4" drive torque wrench covers the correct tightness you need to go, but so does the 3/8, and people have different preferences, so whichever one suits your needs and you prefer is what you're going to need. There will be a link to buy this as well in the description below. Also need your transmission fluid. I always recommend getting the factory fluid when we're dealing with a Toyota or a Honda. The aftermarket stuff works pretty nice, pretty decent on the American stuff, but transmission wise, I always recommend going factory if you can't afford it. So make sure you have your transmission fluid available. Sitting around, you're going to have about 4.5 quarts to get this job done. You're going to need a new gasket for your transmission oil pan drain plug. This one's just for video's sake. There will be a link in the description to purchase one if needed as well. To do the hardest part of the job, which is to remove the motor mounts to get enough room to get to the transmission, you will need an assortment of 3/8 wrenches as well and some sockets. And I'm sorry, I honestly don't remember what sockets I needed to remove the engine mounts, but I believe they were ranging from the 15 to 17 range, and again, I'm sorry for that, but you will have to take the mounts off too, and I did use a 3/8 wrench to get them all off, and my sockets. So have an assortment of 3/8 sockets and wrenches around as well. Get your drain pan ready, located under the transmission. If you need some pig pads or some splash pads, make sure you have those under there too. And there should be a link in the description to buy those as well. Also, make sure you have proper PPE on when you do this process, such as gloves, like I'm using right there, and some safety glasses. Transmission fluid could be hot, so be careful with that as well. Right here, I'm using a size 10 Allen on a 3/8 drive wrench. All you need to do is use that to break this loose. It's usually finger tight when you break it loose. When you install your new one, make sure you have a new washer. But that's on video number 2. This can make a mess, like I said. Just be careful, don't get it everywhere. With gloves on, makes it so much easier and such a cleaner job. Just switch your gloves out and you're back to running like new. So I always recommend using the gloves. While you're watching this drip and drain, you should be looking for debris in your fluid, or see if you see just anything odd coming out. Now I got everything drained. I was doing my best to get the hardest bolts first, which I do on most jobs, but of course the frame right here is in the way. I tried my hardest for a while because I honestly didn't want to raise the motor, but I finally was able to get to the bolts conveniently using this here smaller wrench. Before I could fit that in there though, I had to loosen all of the motor mounts located on the bottom. Right here you see you have 2 bolts on your front motor mount. Loosen them up almost completely to where they're barely hanging on. Here on the passenger side, the upper and lower bolts, I loosened both of those as well. You don't want to create any tension when you have to move the motor up or down, so you don't break those or do more damage, make the job even harder. Trust me, I've done it many times. Over here on the driver's side, Again, loosen the motor mount, and you can see right now I have the vehicle jacked up. It's about 3/4 of an inch off of this motor mount. That's the clearance that you need though to be able to fit your wrench in there and get the job done, which makes this the hardest part of the job, is raising the motor up. You see the block of wood I have right there under the thickest, most sturdiest part of the transmission and motor from what I saw under there. You can see it provided enough room to get to the bolts conveniently. Now that I got the hardest bolts done, I'll go ahead and get the rest of them loose. They are tightened with Loctite or some type of thread sealing or locking substance on them when you remove them, so they're kind of hard, and that also makes it hard to torque them when you're installing them too. But as you can see, we remove all of the bolts, set them off to the side. You don't want to lose any, of course. And remember, if you need the filter and gasket, there's going to be a link in the description to buy those. Probably the drain plug as well, and the fluid. Always recommend to get the Toyota factory fluid. Don't really go aftermarket. Now all the bolts are out. Your pan should just fall right down. You might need a rubber mallet or a tiny little pry bar screwdriver, something like that, to get it down, but do not pry between the pan and the transmission itself so you don't cause any scratches. Now your pan's down, you have these three 10mm bolts that are going to be holding the filter in place. Obviously remove those, set those off to the side. I usually try to put the bolts back in the same location that I removed them from. I'm using a gun to remove these, but that could also cause more damage if it's hard to get these bolts out and it strips it out. But either way, I've found out in the past that it's going to strip either way. Remove your filter. There is a O-ring between your filter and the transmission. Make sure that comes out with it. Sit here and drain it. Here's my new one. Make sure you check out part 2 of this transmission filter replacement, and we'll go over how to install everything and properly torque it. Thanks for watching. I will see you on the next hopefully helpful video.